Suzuki knows more about crossovers than just about any other manufacturer. Here's its smallest one, the Ignis. It's a compact, affordable and very stylishly formed way to make a statement in the city and cruise through the country.
So, what on earth is this? Is it a trendy city car or some sort of rugged supermini? Perhaps it's a small crossover or some form of little SUV. Or maybe it's a kind of fashionable little car that, rather refreshingly, simply defies categorization. Whatever it is, it's made by Suzuki and it's called the Ignis. If that name sparks any sort of recognition, it's because Suzuki sold a car with the Ignis badge in our market between 2000 and 2008, a model that only aroused any sort of real interest in its peppiest sport guys. This second generation Ignis, introduced in late 2016, is a very different proposition though, launched to target buyers who like the fashionable looks of a Duke or Capture style small crossover, but who want a slightly smaller and more affordable package. Now this model features the same high-tech TECT platform that Suzuki uses in its Swift and Baleno supermini models, and it slots into the brand's lineup just below them and just above the company's Celerio city car. There's sophistication promised beneath the bonnet too. Forget diesel power, Suzuki says you don't need that here because the provided 1.2 litre dual jet petrol unit delivers comfortably over 60 miles per gallon in regular use, with carbon dioxide emissions around about the 100 grams per kilometre mark, and those are figures you can improve on if you get the version of this power plant that's bolstered by a clever mild hybrid system. At the top of the range, there's even the option of Suzuki's all-grip four-wheel drive setup, creating a small car with all-round winter traction that'll cost you thousands less than almost any other 4x4 alternative you might want to consider. And it's all packaged up with funky looks that, if you like, you'll really love. So, should you be tempted by what's on offer here? Let's find out. Does it matter much how this car drives as long as it feels light, nimble and nippy? Well, if you take the view that it doesn't, then you'll probably be quite satisfied by the dynamic experience that this Ignis serves up once it's on the move, because you'll find all of those attributes to be very obviously in evidence from the first few seconds of your test drive. The experience on offer here is certainly a world away from the kind of heavy, clunky feel that even smaller crossover models used to deliver. Right from the get-go, you feel confident at the wheel thanks to the commanding driving position and the excellent forward visibility that makes this little Suzuki easy to thread through tiny gaps in the traffic. You certainly don't feel intimidated by large lorries and buses in the way that you might in some other city-orientated runabouts. Plus, there's a super tight turning circle of 9.8 meters, which, in combination with the light steering, makes awkward low-speed maneuvering as simple as it could possibly be. Move beyond the city limits out onto the open road and the Ignis feels much less in its comfort zone. The rather firm ride and the way that this Suzuki can sometimes get caught out by sharper bumps both become more evident at speed, as does the notable wind and engine noise that you get on the highway. Now, if you're carrying rear-seated passengers, you won't want to be throwing this car around too much at speed through tighter bends, because there is a pretty pronounced degree of body roll if you do. Plus, that light steering doesn't really weight up with greater velocity, so you're never really completely in touch with what the front wheels are doing. Having said that though, if there's no one in the car but you, and you can live with all that, the fact that there's plenty of turn-in grip means that you can actually make pretty rapid progress in this car if you really need to, and you can have a surprising amount of fun in the process. Some of the credit for this lies with the stiff, sophisticated TECT platform this car shares with its Swift and Baleno supermini stablemates, the major contributor to a feather-light curb weight that can be as little as 810 kilos. We're struggling to think of any car currently available in our market that's lighter than that, hence the agile feel that I referred to earlier. Now this in turn means that a small, relatively low-powered engine is all that's necessary to punt this Ignis along at quite a decent lick. The unit in question in all models being a 4-cylinder 1.2 litre dual jet petrol engine developing 90 PS and capable in its conventional form of 62 miles an hour from rest in 13.5 seconds on the way to 106 miles an hour. The conventional form caveat references the fact that there is another version of that 1.2 litre power plant on offer, and that's the one that we're trying here, an engine that's had some mild hybrid cleverness added to it. Now Suzuki calls this SHVS, or Smart Hybrid Vehicle by Suzuki technology, and this is based around the use of what's called an integrated starter generator, and it's powered by a tiny 0.2 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery that sits underneath the driver's seat. Now this setup harvests kinetic energy when you brake, and it converts it into electrical energy. It's not the kind that could take you short distances on electric power alone. The battery isn't big enough to allow for that. Instead, the regenerated energy is used to power the standard engine stop-start system, and also to provide a mild extra power boost as you accelerate, around 50 newton meters of extra torque for up to 30 seconds. Now this doesn't make any difference to the top speed, but it does make a decent difference to mid-range acceleration, and it improves the rest to 62 miles an hour sprint time to 11.4 seconds. You'll need to opt for the SHVS variant if you want your Ignis to complete its crossover credentials by offering you Suzuki's all-grip four-wheel drive system. Now this is much the same on-demand setup that Suzuki also uses in its more overtly SUV-like Vitara and SX4 S-Cross models, and it's one that features an electronically controlled clutch pack, and that distributes drive between the front and rear as traction needs demand. As with most such systems, this one will leave you in front-wheel drive most of the time unless a lack of grip's detected, in which case the rear wheels will be dialed in. You won't be expecting this setup to make this car suitable for really serious off-road work, and you'll be right there. There is, though, a reasonable level of ground clearance to better facilitate any light degree of off-piste use you might care to attempt. At 180 millimeters, it's pretty much the same as you get in an S-Cross or a Vitara. 2 electronic driving aids are also included with that four-wheel drive package: hill descent control, which will ease you down slippery slopes, and grip control, which stops the wheels from spinning on loose surfaces, so better maintaining forward motion. We shouldn't dwell too much on the all-grip setup because it's likely that only around every 1 in 5 Ignis customers will specify it. A far more popular option will be the AGS auto gearbox that you can have on the front-driven models. Now we call it an auto. To be accurate, the AGS or auto gear shift setup is actually a computer-controlled automated manual gearbox that you can leave to its own devices. Now it isn't as smooth shifting as a proper torque converter auto, but then you don't get the weight and efficiency downsides of that kind of system either. With an AGS equipped Ignis, you get pretty much exactly the same fuel, CO2 and performance stats as you would with the manual model. Now that said, we have found that the AGS setup is sometimes a little slow-witted, so unless you really are urban bound, the ordinary 5-speed manual stick shift is a preferable option. You ever seen a small car quite like this? Nope, we haven't either. The idea is to strike a balance between retro and modern while building in a selection of design cues drawn from Suzuki's brand heritage. These curious rear C-pillar slits and this unusually shaped rear side window, for example, both reference the company's famous SC100 WizKid model from the 70s. Other influences, well, they're more subtle. The clamshell bonnet, that comes from the original Vitara. The blacked out A and B pillars, they are inherited from the Swift. And those LED headlights, well, apparently they were influenced by Johnny Depp's sunglasses. Yes, well, whatever. Let's get up close and personal with the front end that epitomises a familiar smiling demeanour. As one writer put it, if you see an Ignis close up in your rearview mirror, rather than feeling hassled, you're more likely to feel tickled. Well, don't know if we go that far, but there is definitely something to be said for a friendly face. You only get these full LED headlights with their integrated daytime running lamps on this top SZ5 model, but they're very nice to have, giving the car a unique nighttime presence. The smooth simplicity of the upper grille contrasts with fussier detailing further down, with these vents around the number plate flanked by blanked off corner grilles that incorporate chrome bezeled front fog lamps. Step round to the side and, well, where do you start? Didn't you play with something like this as a 4-year-old on your mother's kitchen floor? I mean, if you're a potential purchaser, you might as well go the whole hog and get yourself the wheel arch extensions, the side mouldings, the roof rails, and the 16-inch alloy wheels that come as standard, provided you avoid entry-level trim. There's no point in being shy and retiring about the paintwork either. So this flame orange finish against this optional contrast coloured roof feels just about right, given the kind of car this Ignis is trying to be. We're not quite so sure about the rear end, which has a, well, somewhat unfinished look, almost as if the car's designer was interrupted before he finalised the intended silhouette. What you do get back here, though, is an exaggerated idea of the slightly higher than normal 180mm ground clearance height. That's an effect aided by this big black bumper, the relatively lofty placement of these 4-piece tail lamps, and the way that the rear screen flows up high into the roof section. Of course, as usual, what's more important is the stuff you can't see, namely this model's stiff, sophisticated TECT platform, designed around what Suzuki calls total effective control technology. And this uses a lot of high-strength steel to make the structure very strong, but also low in weight, which is the main reason why this Ignis weighs so little, even by relatively light class standards. Its curb weight can tip the scales at as little as 810 kilos, which, to give you some perspective, is about 330 kilos lighter than something like an entry-level Vauxhall Corsa. So, let's say that again, 330 kilos. Still think all small cars are much the same? So, time to take a seat inside, and that's something easy to do because that raised ride height makes it that bit easier to slip into the seat and find, well, what? It's difficult to know what to expect after the eccentricities of the exterior bodywork. Now, perhaps inevitably there isn't anything quite so weird and wacky on offer in the cabin, but the designers have done their best to carry on the individualistic theme where they could. Hence the WizKid inspired slits on these clip-on panels here in the lower outer part of the centre stack, which, like the door pulls, are colour-coded either in bright orange or titanium, depending on the exterior colour you've chosen. Further attempts to try and lift the usual plasticated mundanity are found in the two-tone finish that you use for the doors and the dashboard, and these neat centre toggle switches. Even the bonnet release catch is a dinky pull button. It's a pity the wheel looks a bit ordinary. Now, fortunately, the instruments you view through it don't, thanks to blue and white colouring on this big central dial, and shading that more unusually continues in the form of this serrated sort of upper halo. A small digital screen to the right of the main gauge shows driving data like fuel level, tyre pressures, and in this mild hybrid model, how much battery charge is remaining. All good enough, but of course there's no real disguising the fact that this cabin has been built down to a budget. If you hadn't already appreciated that from the tinny way the door slammed shut, you'd very quickly realise it from a short appraisal of these shiny, scratchy surfaces that betray how little you've paid. We can't imagine many prospective buyers will mind that too much though. Even the most optimistic punter won't be expecting a sea of soft touch plastics and Teutonic standards of fit and finish in a car that's after all priced from only just above the £10,000 mark. It is though reasonable to expect reach adjustment on the steering wheel, even on a cheap car in this day and age. That's something lacking here. And with entry-level trim, you don't get driver's seat height adjustment either. To some extent, compensation for some of these shortcomings comes in Suzuki's decision to equip most Ignis models with the advanced smartphone linkage display audio setup that we've already seen in the company's Baleno and Vitara models. Now, this gets you a 7-inch colour infotainment centre dash touchscreen. It's the kind of thing that other city car shaped models either don't offer or restrict to their priciest derivatives. Of course, the monitor will quickly get covered in fingerprints, plus the home screen graphics aren't much to look at. There's no CD player, and it's a bit odd that everything has to be either touch or voice controlled. Still, once you get over all that, you'll enjoy all the functionality that's provided as standard. Impressively, satellite navigation is included at no extra cost, along with DAB radio and Bluetooth. And you even get the Apple CarPlay and MirrorLink phone connectivity that you simply wouldn't expect on such an affordably priced small car. What else? Ergonomics. Well, the cab forward driving position and that short bonnet makes placing the car easy when you're going forward. It's a different story though when you're trying to reverse and see around those thick stylized rear C-pillars, and that's something Suzuki is obviously well aware of, hence the decision to include a standard fit reversing camera, providing you avoid entry-level trim. As for upfront stowage areas, well, you only really get the basics. There are cup holders ahead of the gear lever with a further shelf beyond that and a tray below the conventional handbrake. You'll also find 12 volt and 2 USB ports here on the center stack. For more storage, there's a small glove box and door bins. They're also quite restricted in size too. And while we're being practical, let's comment that these white interior trim panels are going to get grubby pretty quickly. So, time to take a seat in the rear. Now the doors open out invitingly to 90 degrees, but you are going to need to dip your head a little to avoid clonking it on the C-pillar part of this aperture as you get in. And once inside, your expectations in terms of potential spaciousness might not be very high, given that this car is just 3.7 meters in length. But change them. This Ignis is actually capable of doing something you might have thought a city car could never do, namely seat 2 fully sized adults in the rear in complete comfort behind 2 equally hefty folk up front. Now there is a caveat to this comment, and it lies in the fact that you have to have this sliding rear bench to make that possible. That's something you don't get and which can't be fitted on the entry-level SZ3 model. Pushed right back using its full 165mm of travel, this seat base provides for better legroom than you get in some Focus-sized family hatchbacks. The drawback with it is that it's split 50-50. Now that is nice in that it enables passengers on both sides to make individual choices about the amount of legroom they want. It's irritating though in that the middle split will preclude the fitment of a centre rear belt, which means that unless you opt for the poverty spec level that most customers won't want, your Ignis won't be able to carry more than 4 passengers. Now, we're absolutely mystified as to why more manufacturers and motoring journalists don't seem to see this as any kind of real problem. If you've got a family and you're regularly using a car like this on the school run, with friends wanting to come back for tea or granny needing a lift to the shops on your way back home with the kids, it's going to be a problem. Simple as that. The other issue back here is a predictable one, the way these rear C-pillars slightly obscure the side view out and add a slight dash of claustrophobia to proceedings. Yes, we appreciate the fact that the children who most commonly occupy those rear pews probably won't mind that, but if it was us buying, well, we want to check that on a test drive just to make sure. If you are carrying adults, then they'll appreciate the fact that the tall, boxy shape benefits headroom. Plus, on a model with the sliding bench, it's possible to recline the seat back through 2 positions for greater comfort on longer journeys. Rear folk are provided with a central cup holder, small bottle holders in the doors, and a left-hand seat back pocket. Last but by no means least, let's take a look in the boot. Now, Suzuki seems to specialise in providing around 260 litres of trunk space to its customers, that being approximately what you get with the Celerio City Car, the Swift Supermini, and here again in this Ignis. What's different in this case though is that if you've gone for a model with that sliding rear bench, you'll have much more flexibility in what you can carry. Now, as we said earlier, you can alter the angle of the backrest, and of course you can push the whole seat forward to dramatically increase the space on offer while still retaining the option of carrying, say, a couple of kids. Now, for some, that may make up for the fact that the standard trunk space figure on offer here is considerably less than the kind of Nissan Juke or Renault Capture small crossover model that some potential Ignis customers may also be considering. What else? Well, there's quite a high loading sill over which you have to lift heavy items, and we also think that Suzuki's decision not to fit in any kind of space-saver spare wheel beneath the boot floor is less forgivable than it would be on, say, a Celerio or a Swift, given this Ignis model's crossover pretensions. Now, on that subject, do bear in mind that all grip four-wheel drive models like this one have a slightly reduced load base size, and that's due to Suzuki's need to package in a rear differential. So capacity here will fall to 204 litres. Now that means you might more frequently be having to push forward these 50-50 split rear seat backs. On a two-wheel drive model, that frees up around 1,100 litres of space. With this all-grip variant, meanwhile, the figure is 1,086 litres. We wouldn't blame you for wondering where the Ignis fitted into the Suzuki lineup. Looking at the Japanese brand's increasingly broad range of small, compact little cars, we wondered too. Now, before trying to answer that question, here are the basic Ignis facts that you need to know. And the brand isn't bothering to offer the 1 litre booster jet petrol unit that's available in all its other compact models. So all Ignis variants are powered by a 1.2 litre, 90 PS dual jet petrol power plant and feature pricing running from around £10,500 to just under £14,000. Avoid entry-level trim and you'll have the option to pair this engine with AGS semi-automatic transmission for a further £800. Now, two more really interesting options are offered if you can stretch to at least around £13,500 and join around 20% of Ignis buyers who want the top-of-the-range SZ5 model like the one we're trying here. First is the option of an SHVS version of this dual-jet engine, which uses clever mild hybrid technology. Now, if you're happy to go with that, then another £1,000 will get you Suzuki's all-grip four-wheel drive system too. Got that? Great. Now back to that issue of where the Ignis fits into Suzuki's plans. So basically, if you're looking at an upper spec version of the brand's Celerio city car, alternatively going for a similarly sized Ignis will cost you around £1,000 more. The extra cash getting you a car with bags more character and slightly more power. This Ignis also offers an interesting alternative to the brand's two supermini models though, the Swift and the Baleno. The Baleno is a slightly larger car that costs around £1,700 more, but the Swift isn't much larger at all and costs around £700 more in entry-level guise and around £2,000 more in all-grip four-wheel drive form. If you're after a proper, fully fledged compact crossover with a Suzuki badge, then the Vitara range provides that, with prices starting from around £15,000. Although at that level, with that car, you'll get a relatively inefficient 1.6 litre petrol engine that can't get close to a set of Ignis-style running cost returns. Obviously, though, the objective here isn't to plunder sales from existing Suzuki customers, but to create new ones. So people who would otherwise be buying or considering, well, what? Suzuki says this model is unique, but sadly for them, that isn't quite true. In fact, the idea of a city car-sized model with an all-road outlook dates all the way back to the launch of the first Fiat Panda 4x4 in 1983. Now, today's version of that car can't be compared directly to this one because the current Panda 4x4 has a price tag of at least around £17,000, a diesel engine and more credible off-road capability thanks to its higher ride height. You can, though, get a more direct match in the form of the two-wheel drive Panda trekking variant, which has the look of its 4x4 stablemate and a 0.9 litre petrol engine that's comparable in power to that of the Suzuki. It costs around £13,500 though, over £3,000 more than an entry-level version of this Ignis. That's a big price difference. If you do want a more sensibly priced alternative, Vauxhall's rugged-looking Viva Rox model provides that, although that car's 1 litre engine can't match the performance of this Suzuki. What else might you consider? Well, there are, of course, any number of ordinary 5-door city cars that could be yours for Ignis money, but if you like the look of what's on offer here, we think you'll find all of those rather dull. An exception would be Vauxhall's Adam Rox model, which is a ruggedized city car in the Ignis mould, but a less relevant one because it only comes with 3 doors and in comparably powered 1.4 litre 87 PS form, it costs around £17,000. It's tougher to find a decent supermini for the kind of cash you'll be paying here. To give you some perspective, the cheapest, most boring, most poorly equipped ordinary 5-door Ford Fiesta costs around the same as a top spec SZ5 Suzuki Ignis. A closer match would be found in the kind of SUV-styled Fiesta Active model that would cost around 25% more and which competes with other SUV-styled superminis like Hyundai's i20 Active. These being cars that tend to sell from around £16,000. Now, the only affordably priced exception amongst models of that genre lies with Dacia's Sandero Stepway, which costs from around £9,000, which could be tempting, although it feels a cheaper proposition than this Suzuki. As ever in life, you get what you don't pay for. Likely Ignis buyers will also be people who perhaps will have considered a small, trendy, supermini-based crossover like Nissan's Juke or Renault's Captur, but the base versions of those cars cost from around £15,000. So think 17 to 18,000 if you want one with a standard of spec to match a plusher version of this Suzuki. Plus, a Captur or a Juke will also cost considerably more to run. To get closer to the price of this Ignis, you'd have to choose a budget branded small crossover like SsangYong's Tivoli. And one of those would cost from around £13,000, but again, it would feel a cheaper and less complete proposition than what's on offer here. You might as well save even more money and buy yourself something like a Dacia Duster, a clunkier small SUV that's priced from just under £10,000. But you can't really imagine yourself nipping trendily about town in one of those in the way you can with this Suzuki. Ultimately, if you like the look of this car, it fits your price point and it matches up to the kind of thing you need, you'll probably find yourself looking for excuses to buy it. Now, the higher level of standard spec might well assist you here too. Even the entry-level SZ3 variant comes with a 4-speaker DAB audio system, Bluetooth phone connectivity, air conditioning, rear privacy glass and headlamps that stay on for a few seconds to see you up to your front door at night. This entry-level trimmed model also comes with 2 features that you can't get at all further up the range: a CD player and a centre rear belt, so you can take 3 people on the back seat. Now, bear that in mind if you've got kids who might occasionally be bringing their friends back from school. Most Ignis buyers, though, will be happy with a 4-seater and will want one of the plusher trim levels, quite possibly the mid-range SZT variant. Now, from this point of the range, you get a package of exterior embellishments that really complete the look of this car. So wheel arch extensions, side mouldings, roof rails and 16-inch alloy wheels. In addition, you get what is arguably this car's most important interior feature, a rear bench that's divided into 2 equal parts, with each able to recline and move back and forward. A move inside, and a highlight for SZT buyers is the smartphone linkage display audio setup with its 7-inch colour touchscreen. It comes with satellite navigation and the MirrorLink and Apple CarPlay smartphone linking systems, along with USB and auxiliary connections. Plus, there's an incorporated rear view camera that deals with the slightly compromised rearward visibility. That's a byproduct of that funky styling. As I mentioned earlier though, here we've stretched to the top of the range SZ5 trim, which is the level that you have to have if you want the option of the SHVS mild hybrid system and all-grip 4-wheel drive. Now at this level in the range, you get niceties like LED headlamps and daytime running lights, front fog lamps, auto air conditioning, a keyless entry and start system, cruise control, rear electric windows, leather steering wheel, a better quality audio setup featuring a couple of tweeters and a package of desirable camera-driven safety features I'll talk about in a moment. On to options. Now, unless you want your Ignis in the standard fervent red solid colour, you're going to have to pay extra for the paintwork. There are 5 optional metallic shades, or if you want a car like this one with the roof painted in super pearl black metallic, you'll need one of the 5 further 2-tone metallic colours. This flame orange finish, for example. Other aesthetic additions you can add include a rear roof spoiler painted to match your car, or if you're a particularly expressive type, you can add side decals or have the door mirrors, the front grille and the fog light surrounds finished in bright orange. Inside the car, the air vents, the centre console stack and the door handles can be finished in either red or blue depending on the exterior colour choice. More practical additions include rear parking sensors and a roof rack. Enough about that. What about safety? Now, Suzuki wants to emphasise that one of the advantages of this car's TECT chassis is the way that it disperses collision force energy more efficiently, considerably improving crash safety. In addition, as you'd expect in this day and age, every Ignis model has ABS anti-lock brakes, ESP stability control and a brake assist function for emergency stops. There's also tyre pressure monitoring, along with twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus there are 2 ISOFIX Isofix child seat mounts in the rear bench. Unfortunately, fitment of a hill holder clutch is limited to top-spec SZ5 models or the SZT variant with AGS transmission. Should you go for the four-wheel drive all-grip model, you'll also get hill descent control and grip control to maintain traction in slippery conditions. Now, all of this would not so long ago have enabled the Ignis to get itself a 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating. In today's more stringent version of that test, though, the base and mid-spec versions of this car only garner a 3-star result, given that the testers now require new generation camera-driven electronic safety features to be fitted if higher scores are to be attained. For those, you'll either need to buy an extra cost pack, and that's available only on the SZT variant for £750, or stretch up to the SZ5 variant that we've been trying here. And this gets stereo cameras mounted either side of the interior rearview mirror that deliver 3 key features: autonomous braking, lane departure warning, and a weaving alert function. Just in case you're not familiar with this technology, let's quickly cover it. Now, Suzuki's version of autonomous braking is what the brand calls DCBS, or dual camera brake support. So if the system detects a possible hazard, it'll alert you with visual and audible warnings. Should you not respond, then the brakes will be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident if it can't be avoided completely. Lane departure warning and the weaving alert function, they're both activated at speeds of over 37 miles an hour, and they're purely there to warn you, or with a steering wheel vibration if you've deviated over the lane markings, or with an instrument display warning flash if you're weaving, perhaps through drowsiness, within your carriageway. With this whole safety cameras package fitted, the Suzuki's Euro NCAP safety rating is raised from an unremarkable 3-star showing to a top 5-star result. Just about any car that claims to be any kind of crossover carries some sort of weight penalty over more conventional models. The Ignis, though, doesn't. Thanks to its sophisticated TECT, or Total Effective Control technology platform, it's one of the very lightest cars it's possible to buy in our market, with curb weights ranging between 810 and 920 kilos, depending on the variant you choose. Let's give you some perspective on that. An entry-level Volkswagen Up city car is about 80 kilograms heavier than a Suzuki, and so is a tiny Smart 4.2. Something arguably more comparable, like a Nissan Juke, could be around 300 kilos heavier. Now that is a massive difference. It helps to explain this car's impressive set of efficiency figures. Go for the 1.2-litre dual-jet engine in its conventional form, and the official figures suggest it will return 61.4 mpg on the combined cycle and emit 104 grams per kilometre of CO2. And there's no running cost penalty for going for the AGS semi-automatic gearbox either. That CO2 reading will mean road tax calculated at £140 a year, following an initial 1-year charge varying between £120 and £140. Depending on the variant you've chosen. Overall, you're looking at much the same kind of running cost showing as we'd get from the car that we'd see as Suzuki's closest rival, the Fiat Panda Trekking Twin Air model, but it's a considerable improvement on the figures that you get from a conventional Duke or Capture small crossover. Interestingly, the Ignis also matches the readings that you get from a comparable version of Suzuki's conventional Celerio city car, so in this case there's no efficiency downside for funky fashionability. If efficiency is everything and you're an Ignis buyer, your Suzuki dealer is going to want to direct you towards the lineup's alternative engine. That's an SHVS version of this model's 90 PS 1.2-litre dual jet unit. Now, the acronym stands for Smart Hybrid Vehicle by Suzuki and designates that power plant status as what the brand calls a mild hybrid. So here, an electric starter motor, Suzuki calls it an ISG, or integrated starter generator, assists the petrol engine in certain situations. The ISG harvests kinetic energy when you brake and converts it into electrical energy that stops and starts the engine in heavy traffic, and which will also provide a mild extra power boost as you accelerate. Now, there's a readout in the instrument binnacle's digital display, and that will tell you how long the stop-start system has been in operation for on any given journey, although actually not quite sure why you'd ever want to know that. All this mild hybrid technology isn't enough to give you the short all-electric driving range that you get in a full hybrid vehicle, say like the petrol-electric version of Toyota's Yaris, but it is enough to make quite a difference in terms of running cost efficiency. So expect diesel-like returns, 65.7 mpg on the combined cycle and 97 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now that's not quite as good as a Yaris hybrid, it's certainly way ahead of the returns you get in any other non-plug-in small crossover model that we can think of. What about other costs? Well, every version comes with a 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty. Suzuki maybe needs to think about extending that to match rivals now offering 4, 5 or even 7-year plans. There's also a year's breakdown cover that extends across the whole of Europe and which includes roadside recovery. Now you can extend that yourself at extra cost via arrangement with your dealer. A 12-year anti-rust guarantee comes with the car too. Service stops, well, they're needed every year or 12,500 miles. Now, once your Ignis has been registered for 3 years, it will become eligible for Suzuki's fixed price service package, which will enable you to get servicing carried out for a single fixed price that will include parts, labour and VAT. There are around 180 Suzuki dealers in the UK and they're noted for excellent customer service. You can also even out the cost of regular maintenance with a service payment plan that covers you for anything between 1 and 3 garage visits. Unfortunately, insurance isn't especially cheap, so where something like a Volkswagen Up kicks off at Group 2E and a Fiat Panda starts from Group 4U, the SZ3 and SZT versions are rated right up Group 15E. You'd think that the top SZ5 variants with their advanced camera-driven safety systems would be rated lower. In fact, they're rated higher. The two-wheel drive models pitched at Group 17E and this 4x4 all-grip variant up at Group 18E. Sometimes you really wonder what planet the insurance industry lives on. Finally, looking further down the line, residual values will obviously play a big part in the buying decision, whether you're considering paying outright for this car or you're looking at a lease deal. Independent experts CAP reckon that this Suzuki will be worth between 38 and 39% of its original price after the usual industry standard 3-year, 60,000 mile ownership period, and that's a reasonable showing by class standards. What if you could buy a small, sensible little runabout, but feel the same level of emotional involvement with it as you get from the kind of car that you choose to spoil yourself? A sports roadster perhaps, or a convertible? Well, that is the thinking behind this Ignis. Small car customers wanting something more individualistic and interesting were previously limited to models like the Fiat 500, the Vauxhall Adam and the Mini. Now, those of them prepared to look a little further will find in this Suzuki a cheaper, more efficient, more capable and even more eye-catching way to stand out in the high street. So, it's a car you buy with heart rather than head then? Well, yes and no. The efficiency figures are certainly rational enough, and so is this model's status as easily the cheapest four-wheel drive small hatch you can buy. It's also sensibly sized, well equipped, and if ownership surveys are anything to go by, likely to be metronomically reliable. None of those things, though, will be the final motivators to Ignis purchase. No, you'll choose one of these because primarily it's such a refreshing change from the boring mundanity of small car design. And you will probably do so well aware that radical looks can have a polarizing effect on passers-by. I mean, get one of these and more than one of your friends will probably wonder what on earth you were thinking when for the same kind of money you could have had a perfectly acceptable Fiesta or Corsa. At that point, we'd advise you to let it go. Would there be any point in trying to explain that the same kind of money wouldn't buy you a Fiesta or a Corsa or anything similar? True, finding a bit more cash for an ordinary supermini might certainly get you a small hatch with a smoother quality of ride and a better finished interior, but it wouldn't get you a car guaranteed to make you feel good about yourself. It's hard to put a price on that, isn't it?